Hello and welcome to Call of the Wild, a WWF UK podcast. This is the place where we explore the wonderful world of nature, what it means to us, why it's good for us, and share those extra special moments of how it has shaped us. I'm your host, Cel Spellman, and this episode is brought to you by players of the People's Postcode Lottery. Today's guest is the brilliant animal biologist, science and natural history broadcaster, National Geographic explorer, and president of the Wildlife Trust, also a dear friend. I'm so excited to welcome onto Call of the Wild, Miss Liz Bonnin. Welcome.
Oh, I'm so chuffed to be here.
This
Thank you
is
for
so
asking
exciting.
Me. This is great. We're going to have good banter, I'd say.
Well, we should mention, I said friend there, because we were together not so long ago up in Northumberland.
Yeah.
Rambling away, chatting away, and I thought, well, why not bring that to Call of the Wild?
Fabulous idea, Cal. Let's do it.
First and foremost, are you well? How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm not too bad, Yeah, I'm good. And it's funny, isn't it, when it comes to the environment and climate space, to stay positive all the time. You definitely ride the ups and downs a little bit, but I always find coming to the podcast and these chats, they do bring me a source of energy and hope. So I'm excited for this.
That's a really nice thing to say because, before we started recording, obviously it's catching up and sharing where we're at. And it's a difficult time to be communicating what's going on with the planet and how certain countries and people are still prioritizing things that damage the environment. But with that, getting together with like-minded people is one of the biggest healers for me.
And I also think as well, it's good to be honest about it. I think sometimes, people are almost a bit afraid to be like, I'm really down in the dumps and need to take a bit of space away. But I think it's important that you are honest, and actually it's okay sometimes if we just need to take a step back a little bit, especially how much we're consuming on a daily basis.
I
Liz.
am a massive advocate for that kind of conversation as part of the transformation we know we need to have in the world and how we live on the planet. Being comfortable with the discomfort is a huge piece for me that I love to share.
Yeah.
Because I had a few years of really struggling.
Yeah.
And I went and I got therapy because I need help after making some pretty hard-hitting documentaries about, the true impact that we were having on our planet. And from that, I really learned about we are just so habituated to going, ooh, push anything negative away, must be happy. That's, anxiety is a problem. A lot of the times when we have so-called negative emotions, it's our bodies doing their job.
Yes.
It's our bodies saying, here, I've got you. I'm telling you that something in your environment isn't right. And my gosh, we know that our environment at the moment is struggling. And so when we reframe that and learn to lean in and almost embrace those emotions in the same way as so-called more positive ones, they're all really healthy emotions. And I really learned how to sort of process them in a way that was really useful so that I could replenish my battery.
It's an obvious one, but do you turn to nature as a form of respite and
all
an
the
antidote?
Time. It is my religion. It is my biggest healer. I don't think that's a kind of a grand thing to say. It's just the simple, basic truth.
Yeah.
And we go back to this a lot, but when the pandemic happened, people needed to be in nature.
Yeah.
In that kind of moment of an existential crisis. That says it all, really.
For sure.
And I've been really lucky to be immersed in nature for my career, and I've had the most magnificent, life-changing experiences where I felt myself connected to the natural world in a really powerful way. And it's everything that we need. And it only takes sitting under a tree in a park to feel better.
Yes.
I think that connection for me is absolutely crucial. Yeah.
I've always wanted to know, Liz, because obviously you've mentioned there in your career, which speaks for itself, the stories that you've told, the places that you visited, that you've brought to life, is there for everyone to see. But going back, where did it start for you?
I just remember being a kid outside. I was born in France. I'm a very confusing looking and sounding person because I was born in France and we lived in the mountains north of Nice in the south of France until I was 8 or 9 years old. And then I moved to Ireland to learn English with an Irish accent.
Okay, great.
But my family also hail from the Caribbean. And so growing up, me and my sister and our 2 dogs were always outside in this little wood near to our house. And there were snakes and spiders and hedgehogs, and our dogs were just always so happy and jumping around with us, and we always used to have adventures. And I know that. And I was obsessed with little birds in particular. I found them so beautiful and perfect and fascinating. I used to stare at them for ages, wondering how something so tiny, how could there be a tiny beating heart in that animal and his little eyeballs are moving in its sockets? I was fascinated by all of that. And at the time, I didn't know what was happening, but nature was working its magic on me.
Yeah.
And then we were really lucky because we were going to the Caribbean and I was always running around barefoot with my cousins and always in the water and snorkeling and seeing these magical coral reefs at the time. That's what did it.
Yeah.
So I naturally grew up just in love with nature and wanting to know more, which is why I studied biology and then chemistry and then biochemistry and then wild animal biology.
Is it more water you're drawn to? Is it woodland? I don't know. Is it maybe the sea? I know it's a tough question.
It's too hard a question. I do remember recently I hadn't been by the sea. It'd been several months, and I stood and I went, "Oh, hello," and I got really emotional.
Wow.
Because there is something very powerful about being near to the ocean. We know now through good scientific research how much just being by the water, never mind in the water, affects us on a genetic level, the kind of enzymes and proteins our genes make when we're in water. It's all regenerative and healing. So there's a very powerful positive effect to being by the sea.
Yes.
But then I hug trees all the time.
Same.
I need to, and you feel it. If you take a moment and just breathe and put your hand on a tree, you feel the energy of it.
For sure.
And so I was hugging trees in the south of France recently, up in a big national park called the Luberon. And I went off on a trek by myself one of the days. And I hugged a tree and thanked the tree and just... So, you can't ask me the most favourite, but certainly forests and trees and the ocean are in my top 5. But then mountains, right? The power of mountains again, how they make you feel is pretty special too. So there you go. Can't answer the question.
No. It's a good answer though as well. We at least gave me a couple. I wanted to ask as well, actually, just speaking of different areas in nature, because I know you've been doing a lot of work around rivers recently, and just wanted to speak to you a little bit about that, because as well, particularly being here in the UK, the way we've just kind of decimated and poisoned our waters is heartbreaking, but you've been doing a lot of work around them.
Yeah, there's a lot to say on that. First of all, it is absolutely absurd what's happened in this country. And it's not the only country where it has happened, but how we've sort of manipulated our riverways to sort of bend quite literally to our will and be blocked off to our will. And then we wonder about why further downstream there's more flooding. We just haven't really for many generations understood how to keep nature as natural as it should be, because over billions of years, that's how things work, right? But then when the lid was lifted off the controversy and the absolute hideous behaviour of privatised water companies, when there was literally human sewage and agricultural runoff, which is a really serious problem as well, coming down our rivers, then the bills just increased for them to fix it. And we are still fighting really hard. And we're making a little bit of headway in the courts, but it's just, how is it okay?
Yeah.
And for me, that highlights a more, not complex problem, just a more obvious problem about what we prioritize in the global north and how, with a capitalist system, profits trump everything else.
For sure.
So we prioritize profits above the planet, and that's what's getting us into this pickle.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, then, when the BBC, we went to film this amazing story of how indigenous communities had been fighting to get these 4 massive hydroelectric dams removed from this majestic Klamath River that runs from southern Oregon all the way through California into the Pacific. And for over 100 years, the river had been blocked by these 4 dams, and toxic algal blooms were building up in the reservoirs. The salmon couldn't run. They could only run in a limited part of it. But also the entire river ecosystem had suffered. It's not just about what's happening in the river. If you've got a sick, dying river, the river banks,
the ripple effect everywhere else.
So it was a beautiful example again about how we just think so siloed in the way we live, in the way we treat nature, but also how to restore nature. It's an ecosystem-wide issue. So I learned so much from these indigenous communities who fundamentally understand that we are nature and that we have to be reciprocal in our behavior. But we can't survive without those systems keeping the air clean, the water clean, the systems of the planet functioning so that we can
live and thrive.
Live on it.
Yeah.
So all of these stories, as harrowing as they are, what we've done, I think there's beginning to be a better understanding of the need to connect the dots.
Yes, and also what we're going to listen to, because listening to the wisdom of these indigenous cultures and communities, I mean, they've got so many of the answers. Sad that we need to turn to them now, but they have got the wisdom we need.
A lot of indigenous and local communities are struggling. It's not to say that all indigenous people are connected to nature in a way that can teach us, but all this to say that there are certain communities who it's part of their DNA. So when sometimes you interview them and you ask them about, the connection to nature and why it's important to take care of it, they're literally looking at you like, well, because we are nature. So why would we over harvest? Why would we block a salmon run that feeds not only us for our sustenance, but also feeds the entire ecosystem of which we're a part and that we need in order to be able to breathe and have healthy children and live, in a lovely way on the planet.
For sure.
So at this interesting time for the planet, we are looking to those indigenous communities who never forgot.
This feels like actually quite a nice moment, because at WWF UK, the work of local communities and these indigenous peoples around the world are at the heart of conservation, protection and restoration, and a lot of what WWF do. So it's important that we don't play them down, that we actually champion their voices. So today we're going to hear from People's Postcode Lottery about their work in protecting nature. They've been working with WWF for 15 years on a variety of projects across the world. These projects include a lion census in Tanzania and Kenya, black rhino conservation, growing the population from 400 in the 1980s to now over 1,000 in Kenya alone, and using space satellites to count walrus populations and see how climate change is impacting their habitat. One of the newer projects People's Postcode Lottery supports is a project called Solutions for the Future. It's a nature-based solutions project in Lamu County, Kenya, which is a partnership between WWF UK, British Red Cross, WWF Kenya, and Kenya Red Cross Society. In Lamu, they have been working with and supporting the local community to prepare for the impacts of climate change and extreme weather by championing nature-based solutions, helping to save lives, improve people's livelihood, and restore nature. Laura Chow is head of charity at People's Postcode Lottery, and she says what's special about this project is the collaboration between different organisations to create positive change.
People's Postcode Lottery is a charity lottery. I think the clue is in the word postcode. So your postcode is your ticket to play. And that means that if you subscribe, and it's £12.25 a month, then your subscription will enable a minimum of 30% to fund charities and good causes in Britain and beyond. The playing postcodes get entered into all of our draws, and there are a variety of different prizes that can be won, and that allows support at the same time to lots of good causes. So there could be a win for you, but also there will always be a win for the charity partners. So our players have been supporting WWF for 15 years, and we have raised over 32.5 million in support through our players. And the partnership that we are working on in Kenya has been with WWF and the Red Cross. And that money that we enabled through player support has been £1 million towards really investing in this area. And that funding commitment started in 2023. And we asked WWF, what is the best area that you would like to work in that we can really look at this nature-based solution in partnership with the Red Cross? And they had identified that Kenya was a location where teams were already working together. There was a track record. They had that collaboration and understanding, and it was enabling the two organisations to come together with their expertise to build a solution.
David Tanner is Chief Advisor for Africa for WWF UK. The project is still in its early stages, but so far they have consulted the local community and Lamu County to help decide where best to locate the nature-based solutions.
So we've got some really specific aims. So we want to restore at least 300 hectares of mangrove, which is about 300 football pitches. Mangroves are really highly biodiverse, but they also offer coastal protection from storms, which are more frequent in times of climate change, and then incredibly important breeding and nurseries for fish. And fisheries are obviously incredibly important for both income and as a source of protein. So that's one critical aim. The second critical aim is around fresh water. So we want to restore at least 600 hectares of subcatchment area for Lake Kenyatta. So it's restoring riverbanks, making sure that pollution's not going in, managing overgrazing, managing extraction from the freshwater resource so that we secure that freshwater resource for local communities and wildlife. We want to diversify livelihoods so that we can increase income for local communities, making them more resilient. And then finally, we want to package all that up and try and influence Lamu County itself to really demonstrate that these kind of nature-based solutions are effective and that they can incorporate them into their policy and planning going forward, and then try and showcase at the national level and try and influence the Kenya government on the same and try and bring in some investment in the same way. The funding from the players of the People's Postcode Lottery is absolutely critical. It supports 100% of the project. I'd love to say a big thank you to the players of the People's Postcode Lottery for their support.
Thank you to Laura Chow from People's Postcode Lottery and David Tanner from WWF UK. Now, Liz, listening there, really hearing and learning about the importance of working with local communities and indigenous communities as well. It's one of those things, isn't it? It feels far away, but these are the people that we need to listen to, but also empower and champion. Is there ways we can be doing that from here as well?
There absolutely are. And I think it starts with, for me, it's super important to get to sort of down to brass tacks first. And that is to think about, and as a communicator, I'm often reminded, like if we're going to make a new program about a certain aspect of conservation or animal behavior even, there is always that question of how is it relevant to us here?
Yes.
And why is it important? How can we make it relevant? How can we get a little story here that links up a story in the Galapagos to us here?
Yeah.
And I suppose because number one of where I come from, I've literally got, I don't know, like every continent in my blood, right? I mean, I literally African, French, Chinese, Indian, Portuguese. Somebody said Welsh once. I'm not really sure where that came from, but
wow.
And I feel like I'm from everywhere.
Yeah.
And then as a biologist conservationist, you know, everything is interconnected. What happens over there matters to us. So all this to say that I think it's really important to encourage, again, a remembering that it's not just because geographically they're over there that it doesn't mean anything to you. All of these systems, whether they be, you know, biospheres or ocean currents or the air systems, you know, the climate of the whole planet, we're all in this together. And so, yeah, to become custodians of the planet as a whole, as a global species, is really important. And then it makes you kind of care more about other people in other countries. But then it does relate back to what's going on here in the UK too, and what we can do to support local knowledge of place, lived experience, whether it be a coastal fisher community or people in Northumberland, you know, the farmers and the communities who are going to be part of this big project to rewild an area of that. Like there's so much insight and knowledge and wisdom from those people who have always lived in that place for us as conservationists to learn from and to do better with.
Yes.
I mean, historically, we've made mistakes as conservationists. We've kind of swept in and gone, we've learned about this, we need to, you know, cordon it off or fence it off. And actually, we still do it in certain parts of the world. You know, I think it's much more about living in nature, as nature, alongside nature, and finding ways to coexist and support as it supports us.
For sure.
We need to think differently about that. And I have to say very quickly, though, I'm collaborating with a few indigenous communities in Ecuador at the moment, and they are going through hell yet again.
Of course.
The Ecuador government has U-turned on many promises. They're trying to privatize protected lands as we speak. So all of these tribes who, over the years, there's a particular indigenous community called the Waorani, and with other indigenous communities, have fought really hard to win a very important win back in 2019, I think it was. And once they got some land protected, they were very quick to say, this is just one win. We need to keep winning the wins. And if you in the West don't help us, this is what we're going to continue to have to do to keep the Amazon healthy so that you can all be healthy no matter where you live. Cut to 2025. And by the way, before that, there's been lots of challenges. They are up against it again, just to protect one of the most important ecosystems on the planet for all of us.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on,
There is.
Cel.
No, there is. And it's interesting, is it? Probably these are the same governments that have paid lip service to talking about, we know how important this is and we need to protect it. But then you get to hear on the ground and the reality of the situation is It's just words. There's no action. In fact,
Well,
their action is the complete opposite.
Interestingly, Ecuador is the first country in the world to have assigned rights to nature in the same way as people have rights. Right?
Okay.
So it's known as that country. New Zealand is not far behind. Africa is. There's certain places in the world where some really interesting things are happening about the rights of personhood to rocks as well as animals, to rivers and mountains, and yet it's politics, and it involves lobbying, and it involves capitalism, and it involves playing the game to have a seat at the table of the power play that has gotten us to this point in our history. And so, at the moment, the Ecuador government are being lobbied hard by extractive industries like the mining companies and the fossil fuel companies, and are trying to pass a bill that will privatize these protected indigenous lands.
And this is something that has been a gift for me to learn, particularly over these last 5-6 years, because, we always talk about the importance, of legislation, and, the big companies and corporations, as we know, have the biggest amount of work to do. But over the last 5-6 years, what I've really come back to and really kind of has hit home is the simmering of change and energy is at a grassroots level. And it is the local communities, and it is these indigenous tribes and communities around the world that really are at the forefront of spearheading and driving this change. And I remember seeing that when I went to COP in Glasgow. I wasn't bothered about what was going on in them blue and green zones. It was actually getting to meet these tribes and these communities from all around the world, the work they were doing and the work they were pushing, like in Ecuador. I remember I was fortunate enough to go to a jaguar conservation project supported by WWF in the Iguazu National Park, and they're realizing there was the amazing conservation work they were doing within the forest, but it was the work with the local community that had the biggest impact on restoring those jaguar numbers. And same here, I think in Urmston, there was a section of land that they wanted to build new houses on. This was a good few years ago. And to see, my town, Urmston, and the people come together and stop that from happening, no one else could have done that. And I think we're really starting to, as you say, realize the importance, and we have to appreciate the power that we still have and can have in instigating change.
At the core of it is a human story. We're humans. We're beautiful. We thrive when we connect. We're kind at the root of it all. And I think there's so much to learn from those stories about the balance between that and what we're taught about success and corporations and big business. And we need to remember who we are at the very heart of it, and going, I care about this place, and we're just going to get on with the solutions without having to wait for legislation and policy and politics and even like big business. But I firmly believe, and this is really to mirror what you've just said so beautifully, that at the root of the transformation that is needed for us to have any hope of a good future on this planet is just reconnecting to each other as human beings, and to remember to connect to nature. And I think as a communicator, that's my biggest job now, is to tell human stories of people on the ground, no matter where they live. They say in behavioral science, the biggest agent for change is just personal stories. It makes you relate, it creates empathy, and it makes you think, if that little tiny fishing village is able to do that, where they live with no money, maybe I can do something in my community where I live.
True.
I honestly think that's one of the most powerful tools that we have at our disposal, just to get back down to brass tacks and just talk about humans from here,
from in
right?
there,
from the heart.
The other side of that coin, which you mentioned, was obviously then connecting to nature itself. And a big conversation, as you know, we've spoken about it, and it pops up all the time here on Call of the Wild, is access to nature. Now, we're very aware, sometimes actually having access to nature, it is a privilege. But there is, like I think you said even before, even just to go and sit under a tree, doesn't even matter where that tree is, you can get that little daily dose, so to speak. And I think that's another important thing, that everyone has to try and find a bit of nature where they can, because it is there.
It's there, but I think we need to, as a country, we need to support people more.
Yes.
In that endeavour. And every country has its challenges, but I just came back from the mountains in the south of France where there were paths everywhere disappearing into wilderness that made me kind of shocked at how much there was to walk. near quite a few different villages. Now, it's a big national park and it's protected, but it made me, and you know, you walk past a farmer's land, you walk through a flipping vineyard at one point, you know, and you can see the house and there's people sitting outside because, you know, the way the French always sit outside and drink their, whatever time in the afternoon.
Oui.
And, you know, I'm literally walking past going, are they going to have a problem with me walking literally through their tiny little vineyard? And it's completely normal to just have open access. And it's something that we can definitely do better here.
Yes.
Right? And I think it reflects back to the whole ownership and money and power. And I own this. And the minute we started to own nature, you know, and own land, which again, Indigenous people go, you want to own what now? It doesn't belong to anybody.
You can't own it.
Now, I know we live in the modern world and that maybe that's a little bit too blue sky thinking, but I do think we can improve on affording access to people, whether they live in an inner city, or we can do better.
For sure.
And you know, and then that affects well-being, health.
110%. We've done a couple of episodes particularly around the benefits for our mental health. And as we know, we are very much in a mental health crisis.
We need help. We need more trees to hug, like big time.
That's it. A few more parks as well, a few spaces, do a bit of barefoot walking.
There you go.
A bit of earthing.
There you go. Oh, yeah.
Now, Liz, I need to get through some questions that we're always wanted to ask you. Okay?
Oh, gosh.
Fair to say you've been on your travels a fair bit.
Yeah.
Encountered some amazing wildlife. But is there a favourite wildlife encounter or a moment that stands out to you?
There's a whole bunch going through my head.
Yeah.
I am so flippin' lucky. I don't take it for granted.
No, not at all.
This one comes up all the time. We were in Botswana and we were waiting for a herd of elephants to come back out of the forest after, you know, midday sun. And it was about 4:00. And I was sitting on top of this open top Jeep, messing around with my camera, you know. Next minute they start coming out and the sun is perfection. And there's 2 babies and the females are taking care of the babies. And they're kind of walking through and around us. And there's this big bush in front of me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the matriarch, but it was another elder female. And she comes round, but she hasn't seen me yet. And I'm scampering for my camera, but the batteries run out, which was the biggest gift. The biggest gift, right? We all know this, right? That the moments that stay with you are not when you're not on your phone or on your lens. She came around the bush and she saw me and she got startled. So first she looked a bit goofy. And the sun was in her dark grey, crinkled face, bright amber orange eyes lit up by the afternoon sun. Looking goofy, then looking fierce, because she was going to protect her herd and there were babies behind her and she didn't know who I was and she wasn't going to have any of it.
No.
And so I just looked down, my heart was beating through my chest, and then I just kind of looked to the side and then just gently looked at her and then she kind of went, ooh. You know, there was all this gamut of emotions that was going through this beautiful female's face, and her and I connected, 2 completely different animals having a moment and understanding that we weren't a threat to each other. And then there was this still moment of her just observing and connecting with me that I will never forget as long as I live.
Wow.
And that's why I'm so grateful for this job, because those are the moments that have changed me forever, where I understand this is paradise right here.
Yeah.
That's the meaning of life, not necessarily to all of us have an experience with an elephant, but just to take a moment to take in nature no matter where we are and understand the miracle, the magic, the absolute gift.
Gosh, I know it's about one of my favourite books is The Alchemist, but I love in that it's the unspoken universal language of the universe that we, you know, that none of us know what it is, but there's something that we can all speak and even like
and
feel. And you tapped into it there. Whatever that language is, you spoke it with the elephant. I just think that's magical.
It's hard to put into words how it made me feel. That's the best I can do, but it doesn't even scratch the surface of how that made me feel. And like, I was brought up a Catholic and kind of left that behind. It wasn't for me. And then became a scientist. So I'm quite pragmatic. I want proof. I want the process. You know, that is the scientific method is wonderful. By the way, I'm learning a lot more about indigenous knowledge as a science, and that is changing the game for me.
Yeah,
you know, as a biologist trained in the West, what I'm learning about that is absolutely groundbreaking and transformative and really important in the evolution of conservation science. But all this to say, I'm quite like pragmatic. I wouldn't have called myself woo-woo. Don't even like that word. What, you know, it kind of belittles a different kind of spirituality. But since my experience is like that one with the elephant, I am definitely spiritual.
Yeah.
My religion is nature, and I do know, without a doubt, that there is something bigger, like you described just now, that there is something powerful that we can't put our finger on, that, again, Indigenous people are more tapped into with their spirituality.
For sure.
But it excites me, and I feel so grateful.
My final question. If you could solve just one planet problem right now, if you had a magical wand or I could grant you one wish, what would it be? If there was one thing that you could just go, let's just get that sorted.
You're not going to like this because I do ramble, as is evident from this whole interview. It's not about one thing because everything is interconnected.
For sure.
So the one thing I want to solve is to make the planet healthy again.
Mm-hmm.
To do that, I mean, solving biodiversity crisis, pollution, climate change, and all of it.
Yes.
Species loss.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, the solution is us.
Yes.
So it's a transformation which is entirely possible in the way we live on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
It means no longer prioritizing profit and chasing false gods, you know, in the name of destroying our life support system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit more vague, you know, in the sense of like one thing. And in my career, I have learned that it is categorically possible. The will just isn't there yet with certain aspects and sectors of our society. But there are some beautiful humans in different sectors like environmental law, ecological economists, community support groups, conservationists and communicators. Like the beauty is there. We know what needs to happen. But ultimately, it's a decision. It's a decision by the human race to stop messing about and to decide to take care of nature so it can take care of us. That's it.
That's it.
As simple and as complicated as that.
And then that's it. It's like the domino effect.
Done.
You do that out,
Done.
or the dominoes will fall.
Everything then falls into place.
Yeah.
It's actually not that complicated then, you know?
No, it's beautiful that. Well, that feels the perfect note to wrap it up, Liz. I mean, we could stay chatting for hours, but thank you so much, not only for your time here, but for the stories that you tell, for the work that you do. And obviously, me getting to, one, call you a friend, but get to work alongside you in some aspects as well is a privilege. So
You're
thank you so
kind.
much.
And I have to say, when you were chatting away and you were linking all the things, I was like, I need to up my game. This guy is good.
I'll take that. Get that on the
telling
CV. Liz, thank you so much. That's it for this episode, brought to you in association with players of the People's Postcode Lottery. Thank you once again to Laura Chow and David Tanner, and of course today's guest, Liz Bonnin. If you'd like to find out about how you can get more connected to nature, just search online for WWF Prescription for Nature. Call of the Wild is a fresh air production for WWF. Please follow now for free so that you don't miss an episode. The wild is calling. It's time to act.